Hi, I'm Steve Church. I'm here in our Euro Design Center with Maris Sprancis. He's project manager for the new Telos VX, which is just behind me. It's our new studio interface system, entirely IP-based. In this video, Maris and Professor Steve show you how to progress quickly from unpacking your shiny new gear to the satisfaction of making your first call. By the way, where is Paula? We sure could use her at the other end of that call. She should be in the office, but I didn't see her. Oh, I remember. She told me she'd be out for an important meeting. You'll see how to install and configure a basic VX setup, including a VX engine, a VSET phone controller, a gateway to an analog POTS line, an audio interface node, and an Ethernet switch. Later, we'll go on to show you how an Axia element console with an integrated phone controller can be added to the system. The first step is to prepare the Ethernet switch. In this setup, we're using a Cisco 2960G with 8 Ethernet ports. We use this switch a lot in small Livewire installations because it's cheap, fanless, and supports the Ethernet multicast service that Livewire needs. We've already configured the switch according to instructions on the Axia website, so we're ready to use it. The VX engine handles all the switching and processing for the system. It has 2 Ethernet ports, a LAN port for the local network, and an isolated WAN or wide area port that carries voice over IP calls that need to go outside the local network, usually to the internet. The LAN port carries Livewire audio, links to local voice over IP lines or gateways, and connections to controllers, such as VSETs. In our setup here, we're using only the LAN port, and everything will flow through it. Let's move on to engine configuration. The engine needs an IP address. We can enter that using its front panel interface. We could use the web interface for that, but not until the engine has an IP address. That's a bit of a catch-22, and why we provide a basic interface on the front panel. The LCD is also a good quick check of the engine status. The VX uses the voice over IP standard called SIP for communication with voice over IP lines. In our setup here, we'll use a gateway from a company called Patent to convert the VX's IP audio and control to the signals a POTS line needs. This is an FXO, or Foreign Exchange Office interface. An FXO gateway looks like a telephone set to the phone network, responding to ringing voltage, syncing loop current, and generating DTMF for pulse dialing. It converts dial tone, busy, ringback, call ended, and other audio status signals to IP messages in the SIP format. We could use a different gateway for ISDN PRI, BRI, or T1E1 telco service. Maris connects the gateway to the switch and our POTS line from the local telco into the gateway. Before we can use it, we need to assign an IP address to the gateway and do some other configuration. For example, we have to tell the gateway what country we're in so it knows what tones to use. The gateway has a web interface, so we'll use a PC connected to the network to do the configuration. We're doing the configuration manually via the web interface, but we could also use a network-based tool offered by our partner Broadcast Bionics. If you want to use that, you would fill out an online form and get a file emailed back to you that you download to the gateway. Each line needs an ID. This will be passed to the VX in the SIP message when a call rings in, so that the system knows which button to put it on. By the way, is Paula here yet? Now we'll move on to the engine. We'll use the PC to access the engine to configure it. Maris is entering the IP address of the engine now. Let's configure our studio. We use a studio ID to tie everything together that's used in a particular studio. We'll create one and give it a name. Everything used in this studio, such as the VSET and the PC screening application, will use this designation. We need to decide if we'll use selectable or fixed lines in the studio, and how many of each. Selectable lines go to the traditional column of buttons for call selection, while fixed lines go directly to a console fader. For our setup here, we'll make one selectable bank. The result of the selection will go to a single live-wire channel, which will feed one console fader. One thing that's new with the VX is that each line has its own hybrid EQ and dynamics processing. Because of the hybrid per line, you can conference as many lines as you want with good quality. We could configure a program on hold feed for the studio and inputs and outputs for an acoustic echo canceller if we want to use that. We could also set up GPIO functions. Let's move on to show configuration. This is how we assign lines to buttons. Lines can be shared among studios and given different button assignments in each one. Here, we create a show with 12 lines and name it blah blah show. For the first button position, we enter 40 for the name. This is what we told the gateway to use as the ID for its first line. When a call arrives, the VX will find the match and send the call to the first position. The VSET uses Power over Ethernet, or PoE. We can use a standard power injector. If you have an Ethernet switch that provides power, you wouldn't need to use the injector. The VSET needs an IP address. Maris enters that using the set's keypad and LCD. We also need to tell the VSET the IP address of the VX engine. OK, we select the studio the VSET will be assigned to, and the show profile we want to use. This will be blah blah show, the one we configured on the engine a while ago. With the show loaded, we see the line that we configured in the first column position. So, installed and configured, we're ready to make our first call. I think Paula's in the office now, so let's give it a try. The icon on the VSET shows the call in progress. We can also see this with the status symbol icon for this line on the Elements Call Control module.
Hi, Maris.
Hi, Paula. Very good you finally arrived.
Very good you could make it, Paula. Why don't you come on down to the lab and join us for our first call celebration?